Ranking Member Paul, I recognize for your questions.
You know, on the heels of that, Senator Johnson, I can't answer to the subpoena part, and that's a decision the committee would have to make. But I can say that Chairman Peters and I have been on the phone with Becerra. We did request these, and he did chime in forcefully on it, and it is disappointing. They still haven't, not only the documents you're looking for, what we're looking for. We passed a law unanimously to declassify all these things, and I tell people, because they don't quite get it, the declassified thing didn't work because it's already all not classified. What they're resisting, I mean, I'm all for it, and I think Senator Hawley did a great job with the bill, and I support the bill to declassify it. Most of what we're looking for is not classified, and yet they still resist. The two documents I have that are 250 pages are not classified. So what we have is just complete resistance and obstruction. But I do agree with your point that if we do reform of freedom of information, people don't want to have punishment, but if there's no punishment, they won't work. There has to be a punishment. So like Dr. Morenz, I'm still not sure if he's punished. Mr. Raskin, do you know if David Morenz has been fired or suspended?
I don't know, but to my knowledge, no.
I mean, if you want to send a message throughout government, if someone blatantly says, and I guess this was gotten through FOIA, no, not through FOIA, you got some of this information on his email. We now know that he's evading the law by using his own Gmail and saying, I delete anything that's also against the law, that he would be punished and publicly punished to send a message throughout government. Ms. Wiseman, do you know if do you know anything about David Morenz or if he's been fired?
I do not.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the problem we have, and if we want to make it better, there's going to have to be something in the bill. If we put forward a bill, if we put forward more legislation, there has to be some penalties involved. You know, I think without that, we're not going to get anywhere. I think one thing we could do maybe together would be to see if the chairman would make inquiries as to whether was Dr. Morenz fired? Was he punished? Has he been suspended? I think I have seen somewhere in the press that maybe he's been suspended, but it's all sort of kept quiet. And because he can get away with this, and then the NIH still gets away with this, I think they think they're Teflon. They think they're completely immune. And it is disappointing because Senator Peters has signed now several letters, and one of them is probably 6 months old. And we're not asking for the secrets to the Manhattan Project. We're not asking for the atomic weaponry secrets. We're asking for NIH deliberations over what is dangerous, what is not dangerous research, and they basically have told Senator Peters and myself, go fly a kite. And I don't think this should be partisan. Somehow the whole thing got wrapped up and became partisan, and if you wanted to look for these records, you had to be part of this vast right-wing conspiracy. So I wanted to mention that U.S. Right to Know, I think, has done great yeoman's job on it, but I don't think you're part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. I understand you worked for Ralph Nader for over a decade. I'd just like you to clarify for the record, you're not part of the vast right-wing conspiracy, are you?
No, I am not.
And it's really, I consider this to be people from all walks of life, right, left, and others. But up here, it became partisan somehow. Somehow, if you look at, we're looking into this, it was a Republican thing, and it doesn't need to be. And like on records requests, if our roles were reversed, I've told Senator Peters, I can't think of a records request I won't sign. You know, but we still are having trouble getting these records, and we have to somehow more forcefully look for this. And the main reason I want to is not even just the culpability who's involved. I want to make sure this doesn't happen again, you know, that we don't have another virus leak that kills even more people. And the people who look at this say this isn't even the first time. There was a virus that leaked back in the 70s that caused a pandemic. It just wasn't as deadly. Not as many people died, but most people believe that it came from a lab because it had the exact same DNA as a virus from 1954. And it came out, and that doesn't happen because viruses evolve over time. With regard to the law on this, Mr. Raskin, do you know what the law is for violating, you know, the use of, you're supposed to use government email, not Gmail. Does the law currently say what happens to a person who blatantly flaunts the law?
So there is a provision, a criminal provision right now, Section 2071, if I remember correctly, that does prohibit the destruction of records. But it's kind of an old statute, and it's it's not modern. It doesn't really it's not very clearly applying to these situations of ephemeral messaging apps or Gmail accounts.
Right, but even using Gmail is technically is it against the law or it's against a rule?
Yeah, correct.
Ms. Wiseman, are you aware of people being punished for using their personal email? Is it against the law? Is it a rule? Is it a recommendation?
I am not aware. I mean, I would argue that it does, in fact, violate the Federal Records Act because the Act requires the preservation of records. And to the extent text messages, whether sent or email, et cetera, to the extent they qualify as records, they need to be preserved. But the problem, as I've mentioned in my written testimony, is that there aren't sufficient enforcement mechanisms in the Federal Records Act itself.
So basically, in the Federal Records Act, it may well say that it's illegal, but doesn't say what you do if someone breaks the law.
Correct. I mean, there are provisions that place the onus on the archivist to make a referral to the Attorney General. And of course, the Attorney General has a full panoply of mechanisms to enforce the law, but that enforcement authority is very rarely exercised. And so we're in a situation where I think agencies and agency officials and agency employees can basically flout the record-keeping laws with impunity.
Disappointing. That's all I have. I'll reserve my time.